Welcome again to the Old Principle. I am the Old Principle, and we are now going to look at lesson number 185, a cord of wood. Now, we will come back and look at that, but you see this wood that's stacked there? Sort of get that in your mind. This is very important because a cord of wood is a certain amount of wood. Now, before we go any farther, though, we need to listen to the story.
Story 185, A Cord of Wood. Near the beginning of the last century, people often worked for $1 a day, and they were happy to have the work. Boren, an elderly woodsman, received an order for 100 cords of wood, and for this he'd receive $100. It was a good order in those days, and many woodsmen would have rejoiced. But Boren wasn't sure. I'm getting old, and that's a lot of wood, he told Max, the treasurer for the estate. I'm not sure if I can cut that much wood. All right, replied Max. He had known Boren for many years. The old man was a good worker, and Max knew he needed money to pay for his wife's illness. Would you be willing to cut a cord of wood for $1? Oh, yes, I can do that. Well, then do that today, and we'll talk again later. All right. The woodsman sharpened his axe, chose a number of trees, and began to fell them one by one. Before long, he'd cut a cord of wood and stacked them by the road. The old man loaded the logs onto a wagon, hauled them into the wood yard, and cut them to the right size for the wood stove. Then he stacked them neatly in the woodshed. As he finished, he stopped to wipe sweat from his forehead. Max happened by. Oh, that's a fine pile of wood. Here's $1 for the work. Thank you, sir, Boren nodded. I thought you'd enjoy the work. Good evening. The woodsman turned to go, but Max called him back. Would you cut me another cord tomorrow? I'll give you $1, if you want. Yes, replied Boren, I'd like that. So, one day at a time, Boren cut 100 cords of wood and received $100 for his labor. I knew you could do it, Max told him on the final day.
Welcome back. We are now looking at a cord of wood, number 185, near the beginning of the last century. So, last century, so that would be the early 1900s. Let's say 1910, 1915, okay, whatever. Near the beginning of the 19th century, people often worked for $1 a day. Now, that's hard for us to believe, you know. When I was young, when I was a teenager, I was getting 40 cents an hour. 40 cents, 4毛钱, 1个小时. But can you imagine people often worked for $1 a day, okay? 一天他们所得的钱1块钱. Not very much. They were happy to have the work, of course, because they needed the work. Going on. Boren, an elderly woodsman. Now, this is an interesting word. Woods, 森林, man, of course, is a man, 是人. Okay, somebody who works in the woods. So a woodsman is a person who works out in the woods. He cuts down trees and does several of those types of work. A woodsman, 樵夫. The Chinese word that I know is 樵夫. Now, he was an elderly woodsman, so he was not a young person. Okay? He's older, maybe 50, 60 years old. Okay? And he received an order for 100 cords of wood. Okay, 100 cords of wood. 100 cords of wood. Now, here is a cord. First of all, let's set how big a cord is. Let's think of it. Okay, if this is, maybe we get a nice, good, clear shot here. Okay, think of this as 8 feet by 4 feet. Okay, incher. Okay, 8 feet by 4 feet. And then if you had 4 feet deep, okay, 4 feet deep, you would have 1 cord of wood. Okay, then that means that there are 128 cubic feet of wood in a cord. So now, by the way, if you're cutting and chopping wood, 128 cubic feet, 1 cord of wood is a lot of wood. So we have Boren, an elderly woodsman, received an order for 100 cords of wood, and for this he would receive $100. Going on, it was a good order in those days. So 这种订单 order was a good order, and many of the woodsmen of his days would have been thrilled to death. They would have rejoiced, 欢喜快乐, rejoice, 欢喜快乐. They would have been very happy. But something about Boren. If we go on to the next slide, but Boren wasn't so sure. What does it mean not to be so sure? 他是有一点点怀疑. Why? I'm getting old, and that's a lot of wood. I am getting old, 我年龄大了, and I am an older person. Oh, going on. He told Max, the treasurer for the estate, I'm not sure that I can cut that much wood. He told Max, the treasurer for his estate. Now, first of all, we must think about an estate. An estate 是一块土地, but it includes the houses and the barns and whatever is on there. Whatever you own, 你含有的, is all considered an estate. And this must have been a large estate. Maybe somebody died. When my mother died, she had an estate. That is, she had a house and some land and things like that. He told Max, the treasurer for the estate. Usually, a treasurer 是管钱. But in this case, I would just translate it, say 主管 or whoever is controlling, the supervisor of the estate. I'm not sure I can cut that much. So he's sitting here and he's worrying, can I do this? This seems to be too much. I mean, 100, one or two, maybe. But 100, how can I possibly do that? Going on. All right, replied Max. He had known Boren for many years. All right, he replied. He had known 他认识 Boren 很多年. So, sure, that's fine. Going on. The old man was a good worker. So that's one thing was for sure. The old man was a good worker, and Max knew he needed money to pay for his wife's illness. His wife was sick. Man, it's hard for me to even think if my wife got sick and I only received $1 a day. I mean, that's an impossibility. But in those days, he needed the work, he needed the money to pay for his wife's illness. 他病倒了，所以他需要这么多钱。Going on. Would you be willing to cut a cord of wood for $1? So now we're not talking 100 cords of wood, 不是100捆啊，现在是一捆。For $1. Are you willing? 愿意吗? Okay. Are you willing to do that? Going on. Yes, I can do that. Going on. Then do that today, and we'll talk again later. So go ahead and do that today. Cut me 1 cord of wood, and then we will talk about it later. Do one, give you $1. Everything is, we say, fair and square. Everything's okay. Now, let's go on to the next slide here. All right, the woodsman sharpened his axe, chose a number of trees, and began to fell them one by one. At this point, this is very important for us to look at exactly the verbs that we're using. 这个动词是 very important. The verbs are very, okay. First one is to cut down a tree. To cut. Now, if you have a tree, 一棵树, okay, and you have a tree, and you cut it down, 你砍下来, right? That is to fall a tree or to fell a tree. To fall a tree. Maybe it should be fall, fell. Okay, that's the way I wrote it there, but that's to fall a tree. This is a tree. So you cut it down and it goes, pung. Oh, I've done a few of those. That's scary, this big tree. And then you're up there and you cut. Nowadays we use, we call it chainsaw. But in those days, 他们是用斧头, boom, boom. And then when you cut it just right, then you go, whoa, boom. Okay, so it says, all right, the woodsman sharpened his axe. 他就磨了他的这个斧头 and chose a number of trees. So apparently there's some trees on the estate. Okay, the estate is big, it has trees, okay? 所以 he began to fall them one by one. 一个一个就砍下来. Going on. Before long, he had cut a cord of wood, okay, and stacked them by the road. Now, okay, before long, he had cut a cord of wood. Okay, now, if you cut a cord of wood, that means that you, first of all, you cut down the tree, and then you have to chop it up into small pieces. You probably 必须有一种锯子, okay? Cut it up into piece by piece, certain lengths. 这个要, boy, that's hard work. I can just imagine, okay? Before long, he had cut a cord of wood and he had stacked them by the road. 在路旁就堆起来. Going on. The old man loaded the logs on the wagon. Okay, maybe this should be the other way around, but anyway, he loaded the logs. Now, some of them were logs. Okay, he did some of them by the road, but he probably had to take most of them in the form of logs, 原木. So you have a tree, it falls over, you have big pieces, long pieces. They are called logs. 还没有切成小块. So that is a log. So apparently some he stacked by the road, but most of them he loaded the logs on a wagon. Okay, now what is a wagon? Nowadays, we use trucks. 我们是有卡车, big trucks, very big trucks. In those days, 他们是用马车, 牛车, ox carts, horse-drawn carts. So we're talking a long time ago. The old man loaded the logs onto a wagon and hauled them into the wood yard. Okay? He hauled them. What does it mean to haul? When you put something on a truck or a wagon and then you take it there, we say in English, we haul a load of logs. 这个一卡车的原木, a load of logs. We haul them to the what? It says here, the wood yard. Okay? What is it? A wood yard. A wood yard is the place. They probably had a special place for this because the person wants 100 cords, okay? He loaded the logs and he took it to the 除木场, the wood yard, and he cut them to the right size for the wood stove. So that means that you're cutting them. He's got to have a saw too. You cannot use an axe for that. 没办法用斧头. You have to have a saw to saw. He must be very strong. He's an elderly man. 他年纪比较大, but he's got to be strong. It makes me feel tired. I mean, I have done this. I personally have done this, and it makes me feel tired just to think about it. That's a lot of wood. Okay. And it was just the right size for the wood stove. 烧木材的木头的这个炉子, okay? and just the right size. 这个尺寸刚刚好 just the right size. Going on. Then he stacked them neatly in the wood shed. Now, the wood shed is the mu wu. It's a little building just for putting wood. Actually, when I did it, I put my wood inside of the 停车的地方. Anyway, where it was out of the rain. 不会淋雨等等. Okay? So, what did he do? He stacked them neatly in the woodshed. It says neatly in the woodshed. He stacked them neatly. So that means 不是放的乱七八糟. Sometimes some people just throw them in there, but he stacked them neatly in the mu. Going on. He finished. He stopped. He took out his handkerchief and he wiped the sweat off of his 额头上，就出汗, right? So he wiped it off. So it was hard. It's good hard work. It's good. It keeps you strong. Going on. Max happened by. Now, when it says Max happened by, he just happened. 这是偶然经过那个地方啊，偶然经过那个地方。That's a fine pile of wood. 这堆木头很好。Here's $1 for you. Here is $1 for your work. So he's done 1 cord of wood. Going on. Thank you, sir. Boren nodded. When you nod, what do? 点点头. Okay. Going on. I thought you'd enjoy the work. Good evening. Well, I thought you would enjoy. 本来意思就是说，本来我就想你会很喜欢做这种工作. Of course, because he was a woodsman. Okay, going on. The woodsman turned to go, but Max called him back. The woodsman, Boren, turned to go, 转身要走. But then Max 叫他回来, called him back because he had something more to say. Going on. Would you cut me another cord tomorrow? 明天你还能给我砍还有切一捆木头吗? Would you do that for me? Okay. I'll give you another $1. Yes, replied Boren. I'd like that. So, do you see what's happening now? Going ahead. So, 1 day at a time. 1 day at a time, Boren cut 100 cords of wood and received $100. So every day, 一天过一天, he cut this wood. He cut down the trees. Trees fell over. He took it to the wood yard. He took a saw, 这个锯成, okay, the right 尺寸. Then what did he do? He then had to take his 斧头 and he chopped it up into 小块. Just the right size for going inside of the wood stove. So, one day at a time, Boren cut 100 cords of wood and received $100 for his labor. Going on. Ha! I knew you could do it, Max told him on the final day. 最后一天 Max 就说：“哈，我老早知道你会做。I knew you could do it." Now, when I first saw this story, you know what I thought about? I thought about my wife. 我就想到我的妻子。Some days when she is in the kitchen, 她在厨房 and she is cooking and there are many dishes. 她用了很多盘子碗等等。When I walk into the kitchen, I say, "Oh my word, so many messes. 你要洗太多. You have to wash so much." And she looks at me and she said, "Don't worry," the British would say, not to worry. He says, "You just do it one at a time. You wash this one, you finish, don't. You do this, finish, don't. One at a time, one at a time. And before long, your kitchen is sparkling clean. Very, very clean." Well, the point is, one at a time, one day at a time. Don't worry about too much. We do have an email address. Our email address is theoldprinciple@gmail.com. The website is www.theoldprinciple.org. Hey, it's been great to have an opportunity to share a story with you. And I do hope that you will join us next time.